Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to talk a little bit more about what we spoke about yesterday, these controversial issues. I want to add something more about this because I had said, we have to show compassion to people who struggle with these issues. And that being said, but I also mentioned that, it's not about the people, it's about actions which are sinful. That people struggle with, but there's a bigger issue here. The issue is not even so much people engaging in these issues. It's nobody's business what people do behind closed doors. That's between them and God, more or less. The real problem, societally, is this attempt to transform society to be a more permissive society. And that is a threat to society, but it's already happened. That's the sad part about it. It's almost impossible now to fight against this. The best hope we can have now about these issues is just to protect our religious freedom, to say, we're not, don't force us to participate in these things, and I've said for a while that, with this whole story with the making the cakes and all this, it's the same story with the Hobby Lobby and all that, but it's really the same thing. I mean, all the different religions agree on this, essentially, in their traditional forms, but when we talk about this question here, so it's forbidden not only for Christians but for Jews and Muslims as well. But I think there's things that are more obvious to certain people, that this is an insult to one's religion. You don't force a kosher restaurant or a halal restaurant to sell pork. And just as the kosher restaurants also would not be making these types of cakes either. It's not just a Christian issue. It's Christian, Jewish, Muslim. The halal, bakery is also not going to make these cakes. You're going to find, and you do have, usually people think of halal only as far as halal meat, because most other things are halal, but there actually are halal bakeries. There, I guess a major thing would be to make sure they're not using pig lard, in baking. But there were, especially among African American Muslims, there were specifically bakeries from the African American community, African American Muslim community. There are certain traditional foods that developed in those communities. The bean pies, which are popular among African American Muslims. It's not an African tradition, and it's not a Muslim tradition, but specifically an African American Muslim tradition, being that a lot of people who left Nation of Islam and became Sunni Muslims. This is something I see working in the Department of Corrections. You have a lot of guys who, that's how they identify, and some of the guards will be cynical and say, oh, they're not really Muslim, they just they protect each other. It's like being in a gang or something, and it's not true. I see these guys, they're really sincere about their religion, and they also have a distinct and fascinating African American Muslim culture. Part of that was because Elijah Muhammad taught that eating beans is a healthy lifestyle, and so that's why the bean pies became popular in the African American Muslim community, and so therefore in the DOC where I serve when they allow Muslim communities to have feast days on the Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, and so Eid al-Fitr is next week, and they're gonna get that's the thing they look forward to the most, the bean pies. So that's a whole discussion. That when I went as the head chaplain in my prison, and I approached the Muslim community, I took my shoes off and sat down on the rug with them during the Talim class and asked them, tell me about any concerns you have about Ramadan before Ramadan began, and that was their concern, was the bean pies. It was related to the bean pies. So it's a fascinating thing what we have here. What else were we? So, but the thing was, when I looked that up last year, I was curious about this because our imam, who's Turkish, he never heard of bean pies being a traditional food for the Eid, and it's actually like we discussed. It's an African American Islamic culture. It's fascinating how these cultures develop. That's specifically developed in America. I just find all these things just incredibly fascinating. But that being said, so when I looked it up on Wikipedia, there was this discussion about a bakery that existed. I think it went out of business. I believe it was somewhere in California, and it's been over a year since I read about this. Maybe it might not have been a year. It might have been for the Eid al-Adha that I looked that up the second time. But it's just fascinating. But I'm sure if you would go to that bakery and ask for a cake for a wedding between two men, they'd also say no, right? It's not just a Christian issue. And the same thing if you would go to a kosher bakery that's run by pious Jews, also they're going to say no, we're not going to make a cake. And the Supreme Court is going to protect us on that, just like you're not going to force us to, and it's not discriminating. We're not saying we don't serve gay people. I mean, just today, I got a bid, I got a lead for a wedding. I get leads on thumbtack.com and other websites, Gig Masters, Gig Salad, a few websites that I get leads for weddings. So I had already booked a wedding for a particular day, but I saw another wedding on that day. I was like, maybe I could do both because that second wedding's late enough. Didn't say anything about that it was a gay wedding. So then the thing on Thumbtack, you don't get charged unless they respond. So I put a high price because it was far away, and also I had another wedding that day, so I'd have to cut that wedding short. And the other wedding I had that day was a Jewish wedding, so I was going to hang out a little bit, but not just perform the ceremony. I do both Jewish and non-Jewish ceremonies, and they answered me back, and they said what they actually answered me, they said it's an LBGT wedding, and I'm pretty sure they usually say LGBT, not LBGT, but that's what they wrote. And I was talking to the pastor who I supervise, and I told him, I said, which one is it? They got to pick one. It's not all four of them, And I don't know what to do now. I got charged for a wedding that I can't do, and they should be honest and not. And I wrote to thumbtack.com. I'll see what they say, and I wrote back in there. I was like, I don't discriminate against gay people. If a gay man and a lesbian woman want to get married, I'll perform the wedding. But it's against my religion to perform a wedding between two men. Under any circumstance. Like we discussed yesterday, you could discuss about two non-Jewish women. Maybe yes, maybe no. That's what to discuss. But it's absolutely clear that we're not allowed to celebrate this type of sin. Again, if people do it, that's their own business, but we're not allowed to bless it, celebrate it. That's the type of thing. That's the, it's interesting. The Zohar says in general about fornication, not about homosexuality, but you can apply the same idea there. It's a fascinating thing that the Zohar says. That says, "Kol anana mi'olam hazeh b'lei bracha kilu gozel K'Shem Baruch Hu v'Knesset Yisrael." They're different. The Talmud says that anybody who enjoys this world without a blessing, without thanking God first, liturgically, it's pretty much he's stealing from God and stealing from the world. So the thing is, when you're married, right, you thank God for this. You have a wedding ceremony. You say Sheva brachas, right? But if you're sleeping with a woman, a man and a woman are sleeping together and they're not married, there's no brachas there. There's no blessing. There's no benediction. There's no liturgy. There's no gratitude to God that's expressed. You can't just say, "Well, thank God." And liturgically, you can't make a bracha over such a thing. So, and I know some of the Reconstructionists, they had tried to make a bracha even for just stam. They brought from the pasuk ve'emek ishimoy. I saw such a thing from Rahman al-Atzlan. The chorban that the Reconstructionists and the Reform bring was Zelle Chazach of the Welt, Rahman al-Atzlan. And it's wrong. You can't say a bracha on pork unless you're starving to death, I guess. And that's even a machlokes Peskin would be. And that's a part of hashkafically how to view these things. Meaning, a husband and wife, their wedding is blessed. Their union is blessed. Not only it's blessed, but it's a pleasure for a husband and wife to be together. And sex in general is a pleasure. It's a source of pleasure. And we have to thank God for pleasure. But you can't thank God for forbidden pleasure. And it's interesting. Rav Kook, even though I'm not a chassid of Rav Kook, obviously, but he said that after you could say that there's a heter and bia shalei kadarkoi between a ish ve'ishtoi, because there's no such thing as a hanoah in this world. That's also that you don't have the same hanoah that you could have beheter, like the talks about the Chazal talk about the Shibuta, that there's a type of fish that tastes like pork. I guess they say it's the brain of the fish. You cook it a certain way, and it tastes like pork, and I guess such a thing. It's not. It doesn't really appeal to me, but that's how Rav Kook learned like that. That's why there's such a thing. It's a strange thing for him to say. He said a lot of strange things. He was a strange character, Rav Kook. But that's what he said. Sof kol sof. I remember seeing that in the book by Rabbi Boxer. I don't know if I still have that. I know my Baba Shalom, she had that because Rabbi Boxer was her professor in college, and so she bought this book. It was Rabbi Boxer. He was the professor, and then Boxer. He also had the Boxer Machzer, which is true. I saw the Boxer Machzer. I still like Birnbaum better. So. Betsy and Boxer. I saw one of my rebbeim in high school. Everybody knows what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Rav Kook. He had the same thing from Betsy and Boxer. He had the Rav Kook English translation. I said, "What's that?" I said, he wasn't such a. He's like, "I know he's a conservative rabbi." That's what the rabbi said. The rabbi said, "I know he's a conservative. No, it's the best translation there is." So what am I supposed to do? Because Rav Kook's writings, he would just make up words, Rav Kook. And It's like, no, I know it's a conservative rabbi. What should I do? That's the best translation we have. So, I mean, now everything's on the internet. But we're talking, 20 years ago. It's, So, but all this being said, the point I want to bring up is that it's not hefker, it's not a free-for-all, and society is being damaged. And not only is society being damaged, but the people who have a proclivity to these things, not only proclivity, but close to exclusivity about it, for whatever reasons, whether they were abused or there's a million other reasons, they're not being served. Are you being served? That was the guy from the right. I guess it goes along with the with what we're talking about here. The guy from Are You Being Served? My wife said she met him at the mall once, in Idaho. He came and she said there was a big line to meet this guy, and he said some jokes that I'm not going to repeat that were actually pretty funny about the airline that he flew, not going all the way. You could think he's coming from England. So I shouldn't have said that. Why did I say that? So anyway, but people are not being served by this type of an attitude to say, because why not? I mean, first of all, there's the statistics. You would assume that people are depressed because the society is mean to them because of this issue. And society should not be mean to them because of this issue. That I agree with. You should treat every human being with respect. But the thing is that the statistics show that somebody who joins one of these communities where they're all together, there's more depression and more suicide in the community where everybody's together than there is in the general community. So that's that. But there's a bigger issue here. Is that like it's just what I said yesterday? This whole idea of labels. Everything has to be a label. Everybody has to have a label. Let's just say people are people, and stop with the labels. Stop with the the identity politics. Just people are people, and people are people, and that's it. And aardvarks are not people, and rats are not people, and aardvarks who marry rats are not people, even though they're anthropomorphized. That's the issue here, is that little kids don't have to be indoctrinated to this. I had a friend who was what do they call it? A lobbyist. He was a yeshiva bacher who finished Shas before his chasana. He's a young man. He's been sitting and learning for the past 20 years, I guess. Maybe not 20, 15 years. It's almost 20 years. He's sitting and learning full time. He got married. Whatever it was. 18 years ago. And this younger man, when he was a young bacher, he was working as a lobbyist. I think it was the Catholic Church that hired him to be a lobbyist against the LGBT activist community. And again, it's not an attack on people to attack the activists. Just like, and I'll say it like this: this is honest. to oppose radical Islamists, jihadists, is not Islamophobic. To oppose Zionists is not anti-Semitic. And to oppose the activists, LGBT activists, is not homophobic. It's a different approach on what's the right way to approach these questions. And the activist community, one thing that my friend Reb Yitzchak said, he said that the activists engage in a lot of proselytizing. And the question is why? And I asked him, why should they proselytize? And he said the answer is very simple. Because they can't reproduce naturally. And so they have to proselytize if they're going to keep their numbers up. Why do they need their numbers up? What difference does it make? If we didn't have the identity politics, what difference would it make? Who cares what someone does behind closed doors? If they're a religious person, it's between them and God. And other than that, it's nobody's business. And the thing is also, if they're religious in a liberal way, they can talk to their preacher, their pastor, and if their pastor wants to celebrate something, let them up. It's not our business. It's between them and God. It's between their pastor and God also. And this is what they believe. This is what they believe. But don't force us to do what you want us to do. You don't want us to proselytize you. Don't be proselytizing us. Or at least be honest. I mean, that's all. I'm not opposed to proselytizing. I'm opposed to dishonest proselytizing in a certain sense, and even that. How much can we really talk about even dishonest proselytizing? How much can you really fight it? This comes to a subject that I really didn't want to talk about, but I also did want to talk about. So I guess it's Alabama, right? Or is it Arkansas? I don't remember. I think it's Alabama, right? They signed a law, I believe, that no more marriage licenses. A couple wants to get married, they pretty much just register their marriage, but they don't need a license to be married. And the reason for this was to help the LGBT community, that they didn't want to, the judges didn't want to, you had a lot of Christian judges, they didn't want to offer marriage licenses. And judges are not required to issue marriage licenses. And that was, that was the issue. So then they said, all right, no more marriage licenses, which was Ben Shapiro's idea. No marriage licenses. Now, for me, a guy who makes my living signing marriage license, I don't make my living signing marriage licenses anymore. I make a few extra dollars here and there signing marriage licenses. And now that I make a living doing something else, I can make a little bit more for each marriage license than I used to. And not do as many marriage licenses as I used to. But I used to almost make a living marriage licenses, but not just marriage licenses, performing ceremonies. But sometimes it was just signing the papers, and sometimes depends on the couple, depends on where you hired them from and what. You could be getting a couple $100, $200-$300 just to sign papers. It's pretty good. You just sign your name, and you have an expensive autograph. And so that's the situation there. But So now, I guess it's Alabama or whatever, no more marriage. And a lot of libertarians have been saying, no, government should be out of the marriage business. I mean, they're still regulating who can be registered as married, but they're just pretty much saying that they're not related to each other, not married to anybody else. Which, again, why? Why can't you... Why, if we're going to have homosexual marriage, which is a total anathema to basic biblical values, so why doesn't the government recognize polygamy? You know, which was biblically permitted, not necessarily the right thing to do. It certainly seems it was frowned on. I know the Christians definitely prohibited. Although I wonder if there are certain like old African Christian groups. I forgot the one where they have in Aksum, where they claim to have the Ark of the Covenant. That group, they have a lot of more old-fashioned type things, but I don't think they practice polygamy there. But again, the old Mormons did, and the fundamentalist Mormons still do, and Muslims do, and Yemenite Jews kind of, I guess, you know, I don't know, there's no Jews left in Yemen now. There's 1 or 2 Jews left in Yemen, and they're not really recognized by the community, whatever, but Yemen is pretty much Unionrine. And so the Yemenites, they had polygamy. I think the Moroccan Jews had polygamy. You know, certain old communities, that's what they had. So are you discriminating against these religious groups by not having polygamy? You know. So you know, the same thing. But anyway, so that's pretty much the what's going on. So how do I feel about it? Again, as somebody who's you know, especially when I needed money, you know, and I didn't have a full-time job, that whole thing of being able to sign a marriage license, make a couple of dollars, which I still do, but not as much as I used to, because I raised my prices. You know, it's sad that now that's taken away from our clergy friends down in Alabama. But I can see, you know, but it's fascinating how, you know, that's pretty, I don't know why Ben Shapiro's living in California. Go move to Alabama, open a shul there. I'll you know, you'll hire me to be a rabbi there. You won't need to have a bodyguard to protect you because you're probably very popular there. And I'll, you know, if you could make me a good offer and make sure we have kosher food down there, and we'll open a yeshiva. And we'll open a yeshiva down in Alabama. My wife won't go for that, especially if Ben Shapiro's involved in it. It's not going to happen. But, you know. But there's really not that much difference, really, between the Christian, you know, point of view on these issues and the, you know, traditional Christian point of view and a traditional Jewish point of view. The issue is more... you know, you know, this one thing that I spoke about is the identity, whereas the Western world, both on the left and the right, recognize sexual orientation as an issue of identity. The classical Jewish view is moot on the identity of the of the person being homosexual or not. That's not part of what we discuss in these issues. So if anybody wants to comment on these things, like, share, and subscribe. Comment. We're here to talk to you. I've got to clean up a little bit here. Oh, this dog is going to jump on me with muddy paws. I don't want to deal with this. Tell me, what you think about what I said. And again, I don't mean it to be disrespectful to people. I don't mean it to be hateful. Certainly not. I strongly believe we have to show every human being respect. Even sinners, even murderers, and I do it. That's what I do for a living. Is I show common courtesy, decency, and respect to people who are murderers and the worst types of criminals. That's what I do for a living. So I'm not going to treat anybody differently, But there's more to that as well. I have my rabbische Stecken, the Koblenzer Ruf, Geitach mit der Stecken, mit der Kolpik auch, aber der Kolpik ist geblieben in der Heim, wo sie nicht kann ja mit der Pag da haben. But that's it. I have my dinosaur wallet here. My wife gave me. I can't really see it. There we go. The dinosaur wallet. It's cool, right? I don't carry my wallet with me because I work in a prison. So, I always think about what Bishop Fulton Sheen said when he went to prison to visit. He said the only difference between you guys and me is you guys got caught. We're all sinners, so we can't judge people for sinning differently than us. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. We'll see you later.